What's up guys, Kennan here from Marshall Goldman Motor Sales, and today we're taking a look at the Ferrari 348 Spyder. So a little bit of background on the Ferrari 348 Spyder. So the 348 Spyder was produced from 1994 to 1995. It was the last iteration of the 348 before Ferrari switched to the 355. Incredibly, Ferrari only built just less than 1,100 348 Spyders. 1,090 is the exact number, and this happens to be one of them. This, of course, is presented in classic Rosso Corso over a tan interior. Taking a look at the engine of the 348, so the 348 Spyder actually received an uprated version of the normal 348 engine. So this 3.4 liter 4-valve per cylinder V8 actually received 320 horsepower over the standard 348's 300 horsepower in the year 1994. Now this car is only 238 foot-pounds of torque, but not a lot, but it also doesn't weigh very much. This is very much a high-strung V8 that likes to be revved out. The 348 is not the most loved Ferrari of all the V8 models, particularly because it was viewed by many in the times, or rumored to be viewed by many, as being inferior to the Honda NSX, which, if you actually read most magazines from the era, that's not actually true. Most magazines actually preferred the 348. Recently, Harry Catchpole of Evo magazine considered the 348 to have some of the best steering he's ever felt in any road car ever. High praise from a guy who's driven a McLaren F1 on several occasions. The 348 is very similar to the 355 in a lot of ways, but it actually receives some things that are definitely of its era. From the 80s, it receives the Testarossa-esque graded sills. It receives slightly more square mirrors, a slightly different front fascia, bigger fog lights, one intake on this side, not one on the other. But there are a lot of similarities to the 355. You can definitely see where the styling came from. And the interior on both cars are actually very, very similar. So what would make you choose that 348 over a 355? Well, there's the simple fact, it's just less complicated. If you're looking for a manual transmission car, these only came as a manual, where the 355, of course, was offered in an F1 variant, which came at the end of its life cycle from 1998 to 1999. But the 348 only came as a 5-speed manual, so if you like that third pedal, you're guaranteed to get one. The 348 also has a less complex suspension system. The 355 actually has adjustable suspension, whereas the 348 does not have an electronic adjustable suspension. So there's one less thing to break. The same thing goes for a couple of other engine components for the 348. They're not known for having the valve issues that the 355 is notable for. They do both require the engine out service, which requires dropping the engine out of the car to change the belts. They are belt driven. But the 348 is just a generally more simple beast. So opening up the front of the 348, you actually have decent storage space, a lot more than you're probably expecting. We do have the books and everything there inside, but in this 348 you can put actual stuff in the front. Same thing with the 355. So opening the door, you get a good look at those cheese graters. Such a cool design you don't see anymore, obviously. And then taking a closer look at this particular example, you notice not a ton of wear, a little bit of wear on the side bolster, but not much. Again, super simple, no buttons on the steering wheel whatsoever. Of course, you have the legendary Ferrari horn, which sounds really great. This car, actually no sticky vents or anything. That's actually been well taken care of, and no dash shrinkage either. Everything is in really good nick. Another thing the 348 really nails are the gauges. The gauges are very much of their era, but they're very clean, very legible. They're great. So you have oil pressure up there, water temperature there, then you have speedo, tach, and down here you have fuel and oil temperature. So you have all the gauges you need. Definitely, I would say, very much a driver-centric cockpit. And then if you're looking for the radio, it's actually hidden behind this little leather cover. Ferrari thought that the radio would just be too ugly to intrude upon this beautiful Italian interior, so they cover it with that, which is kind of cool. But again, as I mentioned, no stickiness up here. This has all been taken care of on the vents. Everything looks really nice, and everything feels nice to the touch. Even the buttons here aren't sticky at all. All of that has been addressed. Kind of another cool quirk of most Ferraris of this era is that the key actually folds. It's kind of weird. The idea is so that the key and keychain don't rest on your lap. The key actually folds in half. The Testarossa does this too. It's kind of a weird but interesting little quirk of the 348. Another thing the 348 is notable for: pop-up headlamps. How do you go wrong with that? They look so cool when they're out. That's something, as someone who, you know, a kid from the 90s, I love pop-ups. Kind of an interesting quirk of the 348. During this time in the US, you had to have these Mighty Mouse, as they're known, seatbelts. So you'd plug part of the seatbelt into here, the part that sits between the two seats right there, and then you take the other part of the seatbelt over here, and this would be your lap belt. Most people just bother putting the lap belt on, not with the shoulder belt. But it's funny, you know, when you turn the key in the ignition, you see this little thing run along into its little home over here. You know, along the door, and it's kind of cute, but I can see why nobody uses them, and thank goodness that didn't become something we all had to have for the rest of eternity. Alright, sound time. First sound you have to hear, the gated shifter. Something about a gated shifter is just awesome. Let's go ahead and start it. You get the wonderful Ferrari starter motor. And that 3.4 liter V8 comes into life. Give it a couple of revs. Alright guys, well that wraps up our time with the Ferrari 348 Spyder. What a fun car! They're really enjoyable, you can use them. It's pretty much the same experience as the 355 in a lot of ways. You get, I'd say, 85%, 98% of the Ferrari 355 experience. Most importantly, you do get the authentic 90s classic Ferrari experience with the gated shifter and that wonderful V8 sound and the looks, and it's great. If you're considering getting into the Ferrari market for the first time, you should consider the 348, especially if you're looking for a classic Ferrari. Be sure to check this one out via the description down below. Also be sure to check us out on the rest of our social media at Marshall Goldwyn Motor Sales. And thank you for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. So a little bit of background on the Ferrari 348 Spyder. Trucks. Always trucks here. Always trucks.